Good morning. Happy Monday to you. This is Monday morning. It's a little gloomy in San Antonio here, but you know what? I'm still grateful that we woke up this morning. And I just want to say happy Monday. Welcome to Casting the Net Mondays with Coach Rice, where we dive deep into topics that matter most for your mental health and well being. I am your host, Coach Rice, your professional certified life and health coach and trained mental health counselor. I just want to welcome my special guest today. Her name is Samantha Williams. She is a passionate advocate for health and wellness, a nutritionist here to share her expertise in navigating women's hormonal health, tackling chronic inflammation, and how to use food as medicine. When I saw her on one of her shows recently, how to deal with metabolic health, I was like, wow, I'm excited to have her as a guest. And so Samantha, I just want you to share where you're from, and also what first sparked your interest in nutrition, and what led you to specialize in women's hormonal health and chronic inflammation.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me, first of all. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the introduction as well. So I'm from the UK, as you can probably tell by my accent. I'm currently just in the south of England at the moment, and just come over on a ferry from the Isle of Wight back onto the mainland. So yeah, I mean, the thing that sparked me, I mean, there's been many sparks, I have to say. Like, it wasn't just one thing. But I guess like the most profound one of those things was when I was suffering with my own issues, which is, I think, very common for anybody that's in this kind of industry, health and wellness. You know, we've had our own problems and we've healed ourselves or whatever with a particular modality. So for me, it was I actually was living with an eating disorder for a number of years. And I was actually living out in Bangkok. I used to be a biology teacher before I became a nutritionist, and I was teaching out there at an international school. And it was during COVID, the first lockdown we had, and I was living in a flat on my own. So I was locked down in there for about 3 months. And I really kind of saw like my behavior was really polarized in that time. And I kind of, that was the first time, even though I'd known that I'd had an eating disorder for a long time, was the first time that I ever actually admitted it to myself. Because I would always tell myself, oh, it's normal, everybody does this kind of thing, you know, it's sort of it's just a way to live your life, really. And for that moment, I kind of was like, I need to change this. Like, this is not serving me anymore. And one of the reasons why was because my periods had stopped. So I'd had a lot of problems with my menstrual cycle, which is a common kind of condition that happens when you're very restricted with food and, you know, over exercising and things like that. So I looked for help through the sort of normal system, which was to go to the doctor and get a prescription basically. And then so once lockdown had sort of ended, I went and got a blood test, and the doctor just said to me, "Oh, your hormones are low, so your periods will come back." And I just thought, okay, but it's not, like, there's more to it than that. And there was no kind of asking me about my lifestyle, asking me anything about how I was feeling mentally, because an eating disorder is a mental health condition. It manifests itself physically, but it's a mental health issue. And I felt really unseen and unheard. And I was reaching out for help, which for me was a massive thing that I'd never done before. And so I looked for an alternative avenue to go down, and I found an Ayurvedic doctor. So Ayurvedic medicine is the old traditional Indian medicine, which has been around for like 5,000 plus years. And I'd learned a little bit about the theory of that when I did my yoga teacher training in 2018. And I really like the idea of this. So the sort of the foundation of Ayurvedic medicine is looking at your body's three doshas that you're made up of, and then balancing those three things. And it's all about finding balance. It's all about using nutrition and diet to do that, but also lifestyle things like exercise, breath work, yoga, the time that you eat, all these different factors. And I went to see this doctor, and she did a full consultation of me. I just finally felt like somebody actually cared about my whole life, not just that one kind of physical issue that was happening. And she prescribed me a plan of, 2 weeks worth of nutritional advice, like the foods that I should be eating, the times of day that I should be eating them, also yoga that I should be doing, and gentle exercise. And within 2 weeks of following that, my period came back. My body was like back in balance. And I just thought to myself, like, why are we not helping people do this? We've got this wisdom and it's been around for a long time. Like, we know that the way that we nourish our bodies, not just with food, but with other things as well, can, determine your health outcomes. And so, I wanted to deliver that message basically. So that was the kind of turning point, I guess, for me being a teacher and being in education and working with teenagers about the body and the physical body, to wanting to then spread this message. I still use my teaching background, but I retrained as a nutritionist and kind of moved forward with that. So, and that's always been my, I guess, my ethos of what I'm doing is healing naturally, using food, lifestyle, like changes to the mental health as well, which all contribute to overall health. Not just focusing on, a quick fix, looking at the root cause of what is making these people live with metabolic conditions, which are so commonplace these days, and spreading that word. So I think that answers your question.
That does actually. I have so many more questions. so,
That's okay.
what it's so many. It's different types of eating disorders. Which one were you struggling with?
Well, I think during the time that I went through my recovery, I realized that there isn't, I think traditionally anorexia and bulimia are like the two that people know about, but there's like this whole spectrum of behaviors that you can have within an eating disorder. And so I actually asked my therapist once, I was like, what do I have? And she was like, well, you haven't got like classic anorexia, you haven't got classic bulimia, you're kind of like somewhere in the middle of that. I kind of had like features of both of those things. I would sort of go through cycles of being very restrictive and over exercising, and then going through periods of like, like more like binging kind of behaviors and purging and stuff like that. So it was a mixture of those things. And it wasn't like all the time either. I would go through periods where it was fine and I was like, okay. And then something would trigger me and I would go into like a cycle of that sort of behavior. So yeah, and I think through my like actual recovery that I did, which took about 18 months of sort of therapy and stuff, but still an ongoing journey. You don't just like suddenly go, oh, I'm cured. It's learning to live with it and changing your mindset really, and behaviors in your mind. Um, yeah, just during that time, I learned so much about it. And I was actually studying my nutrition masters at the same time. So it was this really weird, like, duality of studying and learning about food every day, like in my face, but also kind of dealing with like my own mental health issues around that, and learning about my relationship with my body, my relationship with food as well. And I feel like having those two sides of experience for me has given me an ability to really relate to my clients, not just on like a scientific level, but on a deeper like emotional level, on like a spiritual level even as well. And understanding like how complex our relationship with food really is.
And relationship with food is so key. It is so key to this situation. And as you talk about food for medicine, can
Yeah.
can you explain how chronic inflammation like affects your overall health, and what type of like steps can women take to reduce the inflammation through actually using food for medicine?
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the ways that inflammation leads to these diseases is that we often live with a very low level grade of inflammation in our bodies that is kind of not even detectable. But because it's chronic, it's going on for this long period of time. Over time, it leads to metabolic changes. And I just wanted to kind of explain here that inflammation is a normal like immune response. So all types of inflammation are not necessarily bad. Like when you get acute inflammation, it's usually to do with some sort of healing process that's happening in the body, dealing with disease or something, or a injury, for example. But what happens with a lot of people who develop metabolic problems is that they are living with chronic low grade inflammation for many, many years, and they don't even know that they've got it in the beginning. Even as early as childhood, these things can start. There are statistics around now about how many children are living with early like cardiovascular disease because of the type of diet that they're eating. And so a lot of your potential for developing diseases later in life are laid down when you're a young person. That doesn't mean that you're necessarily going to have these diseases, but the way that you choose to live your life subsequently will obviously increase the chances of that or reduce them. And so inflammation is really the start of most metabolic diseases in the body, because the body is in this constant state of battling with itself, if you see what I mean. So there's so many more kind of intolerances now and allergies and things like that that are coming out, and that is due to this increase in low level inflammation in the body. And if you can reduce inflammation, you can basically change the health outcomes of a person. And that's actually quite a simple thing to do in terms of behavior around food, like what you actually do. The biggest sort of barrier, I think, to that is number one, that, well, there's actually several barriers, but that we're constantly bombarded with, high saturated fat, high sugar, refined sugar, high salt foods, which are abundant. Like it's so easy to get them, they're everywhere. And they trigger the brain to go, oh, this tastes really good, dopamine hit, instant gratification kind of thing. And so people eat them more, and they don't know that they're actually causing this inflammation in the body. And it's this momentary kind of like, oh well, a moment on the lips, it doesn't matter, it's not going to affect me kind of thing. But actually every single little decision that you make on a daily basis is going to build up and build up and build up and give you an eventual health outcome that you might not necessarily want. So there are simple steps you can take to reduce inflammation in the body. Sleep is a massive kind of contributor to that. So you want to be getting like 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, undisturbed, if possible. Obviously, it's not always possible, particularly if you've got kids and things. But yeah, trying to get that amount of sleep away from devices and things an hour before sleep and an hour after you wake up in the morning. Staying hydrated. So most of my clients, I get them to buy a bottle, and you can buy ones with filters in now. You can buy them with diffusers in if you want to flavor the water, and just carry it with you all the time. Like always have a bottle. I've got mine here, just so that if you think, oh, I feel a bit hungry, actually can just drink some water first, see if that satisfies your hunger, because quite often it can get confused. Another thing is to just up your intake of plant-based foods. I'm not saying you need to go vegan or you need to stop eating meat or any of those things, but increasing your intake of plant-based foods reduces the oxidative stress in the body and reduces inflammation. And so any fruits, vegetables, beans, lentils, pulses, nuts, seeds, all whole grains like brown rice and things like that, all of these foods are anti-inflammatory foods. And there's so much research around that now. It's not even something that we think is the case. We know it's the case. And they're also in abundance around us, but we just have to look for them a little bit more and then think a little bit more about how to consume them, because they're not in a packet ready to just put in your mouth. You've got to, well, I mean, you could say they are, bananas in its own skin, you just peel it and you stick it in your mouth, don't you? But they often take a bit more, and the last one really, I guess, just in this little summary, is to reduce your consumption of ultra processed and highly processed foods. So if a food is in a shiny packet with loads of bright colors on it, think about that. Why is it like that? It's like that to try and convince you that it's something good to eat, because it isn't.
Right.
It's marketing trying to, appeal to your senses. If it's got a cartoon character on the front of it, it's not going to be good for your kids to eat. It's making them go, Mummy, I want that, but it's definitely not something that is going to nourish them. if it's a convenience food, you know, like a ready-made meal or something like that, you can definitely get ones which are better, but you can definitely get ones which are not so good. If it's got a huge list of ingredients on the back of it, if you don't recognize half of them, if they don't come normally in a like a regular kitchen, then it's probably not like real food. It's probably a food that is created from like waste products of something else that have been pushed together into a blob to make some food, I say in inverted commas, that actually is not going to nourish you. You know, it might satisfy like the dopamine hit in the brain and give you a little bit of a distraction from feeling depressed or feeling lonely or whatever it is that you're trying to kind of suppress. But yeah, those foods are metabolic disruptors, and again, increase inflammation in the body, so more likely to trigger things like type 2 diabetes, obesity, and other situations like that. So
And that's it. You are absolutely correct. I've learned that in the program that I coach as well. And it's interesting how sleep will, I give you a perfect example. If I don't get enough sleep, what happens to me is that I can feel it in my knees.
okay. Hmm.
And, or if I don't get enough if I'm not hydrated enough, I can actually feel it in my body.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we moving so fast, sometimes we don't pay attention to what our body actually is communicating to us.
Yeah.
And so that's why you are so right about all of these, your mindset,
Hmm.
your hydration, your sleep. I have to be better at that. The sleep
Yeah,
part, I have to be
yeah, and
better at the
they're
sleep part
basic.
because it does hinder how much weight I gain or weight I lose. It Hydration does the same thing. And then I can tell when you don't have all of those extra processed foods in your body, when you
Yeah.
start to eat more whole foods and then you put
Yeah.
something in your body that's maybe processed, you actually can feel the difference right away.
Yeah, absolutely. You become super sensitive to how the food feels in your body. And I used to work at a detox center in Thailand. After I finished my teaching, I came back to the UK, did my master's, and then I moved back to Thailand and worked at a healing center out there. And one of the processes that they do there is a water fast. I'm not saying that this is what I would advise for you, because you know I don't want people to just go, oh, suddenly I'm just going to stop eating and just drink water, because that's definitely not the right thing to do. But these people were coming to the center, you know, we were doing like a full assessment of them, and you know, obviously advising them based on that. And you know, they would go through like a pre-cleanse where they were eating just whole foods, but usually raw foods. And then they would have their period of fasting, however that long that was, and then they would reintroduce foods slowly over time. And one of the things that they would always say is that when you start reintroducing foods, you really feel that food in your body. Like you notice the flavor of it much more because you're chewing it. You're more present with the whole process. It's more mindful. You're actually like noticing, and you feel full, and then you're like, I'm going to stop, that kind of thing. And I think having a, excuse me, that sensitivity is something that we have cut ourselves off from, because we're always up here in our heads. We're always like distracted by everything going on around us. And very few of us remember during the daytime to come back into our bodies and feel this amazing, like wise machine that we're living in. You know, we are full of signals and different messages that can come from the body. And, you know, sadly we do find ourselves ignoring it a lot of the time. Maybe you do feel it and you do notice it, but actually you're just like, oh, I don't care, or I haven't got time to worry about it, whatever. And it gets forgotten, unfortunately. So I think that's a really, really important point is, you know, one of the things I do with clients is I help them to do a body scan meditation. So they come into their body and they actually feel every single part of their body. And for some people, they've never done that, you know, and that's a really kind of transformational thing. And they're like, oh my God, I can feel the sensation here that I've never felt before, or whatever. And you know, it's not just about the food. And I think that's what probably both of us, our messages is like it's a holistic thing. Like it's about
Yes.
your mindset, it's about your lifestyle choices, it's about family, relationships, connections, Like all of these different elements really contribute to overall health.
Yeah, and I think the most dangerous thing that can happen when it comes to your health is to be numb, emotionally numb, or we can actually get physically numb where we're not paying attention to the signals. We like that
Yeah.
we deaf tone to those areas that really need our attention, such as
Yeah.
like hunger. When you hungry, your stomach literally will growl,
Hmm.
and that's an indication that you really are truly hungry. But when it comes to like hydration, we don't recognize. We think we hungry, but we actually need water.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
so
Yeah.
we really,
Yeah.
when you turn off those signals and become numb, it's similar to
Mhm.
becoming emotionally numb, where you're not feeling and living life to your fullest. And I can
Yeah.
say that because I know how to turn off that and know how to turn it back on.
Mm.
And I don't like it when it's off because you override all the signals that tell you what you need to do, and you do what you want to
Yeah.
do because you want to be numb. You don't want to feel. That's really the ultimate
Mm.
root cause, is that you don't want to
Yeah,
feel. And so,
exactly.
you know, that's you know, that's why I asked you about your eating disorder, because I had this I had the binge eating disorder. And you're
Yeah.
right, you're not cured. You have to intentionally
Yeah.
watch out for it, and you have to be
Yeah.
intentional about when it pops up, what triggers it, and things of that nature. So it's really
Yeah.
interesting. So tell me
Yeah, it
about.
is really interesting.
Oh,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Sorry. I was just going to say, it's like having that kind of ability to feel the body is something I think that we've lost as animals because we forget that we're actually animals. We all animals can feel, and I think that it's like a superpower that we've forgotten, and we listen to our minds all the time. This thing is a continual like source of a narrative that is going on and on and on, and it's been influenced by all these different factors in your life throughout your life, and it's not always got the best advice for you. It can be like your biggest friend and your worst enemy at the same time. And
Yes.
anybody out there that's had any sort of mental health issue will know that from an experience. If you can change your mind, you can literally change your life. And that's actually the only way to change your life, really, is
Yeah,
to
you have
change
to.
that.
The mind has to change. That's why it's
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
interesting how um, when we are when we are when we're resistant to change, it's really because you have not changed your mindset about
Yeah.
what's happening. It's not that you really don't want to change, it's your mind. You're right, your mind have to change, because once your
Yeah,
mind
exactly.
change, your body follows. It's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
mind is so
exactly.
powerful.
Yeah, and the theory of neuroplasticity, that we can
Yes.
create new behavior pathways in our brain. Like we always used to think, didn't we, like years ago, that you were set, like this was you, like you couldn't change. But we now know, and we've seen it, that you can make different connections, and that's something that I help my clients do. Is I say, right, this is your old pathway. What's the new pathway you want to do? This is the trigger. This is what you used to do. This is now the trigger you want to do, like, and actually doing that and repeating it and being consistent with it is the only way to do that. And I just wanted to mention as well, you mentioned about sort of emotional kind of stuff, and one of the things that I do is I help people to understand the difference between physical hunger, emotional hunger, because they are always like, kind of crossed over for a lot of people. Quite often, if you're bored, you might eat, for example. If you're feeling an emotion that you don't want to feel, like you're at home on your own in the evening and you've stopped work, you've finished watching TV, and now you're like sitting there and you're like, I feel lonely. I'm going to eat. You go to the fridge and you scan, you go, oh, I'm looking for something and I don't know what it is. I don't know what I want. I want something. So if you're feeling like that, that's probably not physical hunger. That's probably emotional hunger. And you're never going to satisfy an emotional hunger with food, which is why people can eat and eat and eat and eat and they don't feel satisfied. That's a sure sign that it's an emotional thing. And really, the first
Yes.
step of changing that is observing that, first of all, in yourself, which is quite a hard thing to do. And then allowing yourself to sit with that feeling. what is that? Ask yourself, like, what is that feeling that I'm trying to suppress with food or distract myself from? Is it anger? Is it fear? Is it loneliness? Like, what is it? And often that is the start of the journey of really changing your behavior. If you're eating emotionally, if you're eating to manage your emotions.
Yes, that's why it's so good to be in tune to it, because
Yeah,
it's always happening. You dealing with emotions all the time, and it's
yeah,
always happening. And a lot of times we also have to be careful with the dopamine hit. And it's really also the memory of it,
yeah,
because you can follow a memory as well to get
yeah.
the dopamine hit. Like, that's why drugs are so common,
Exactly. Yeah, yeah.
because they're looking for that memory
Mm.
in that dopamine, to get that dopamine hit. And
Yeah, it's the same pathway in the brain, isn't it? It's the
yes,
reward. It's that reward center. But you can get that reward and that dopamine hit from much better places than, looking on your social media feed, for example, or, eating a chocolate bar. You can get it from elsewhere. You just got to learn different strategies to be able to do that. How are you coping with stress? How are you coping with your life? We all
right,
have coping strategies for life, but some of them are not as good as others. Some of them are an instant gratification and they may well be leading to like poor health outcomes. Some of them are, positive and they're going to make you actually feel better in the long term. But they might be harder work to begin with. But it depends if you want that instant gratification and a poorer outcome, or you want like a longer term strategy that's actually going to serve you for the rest of your life. And that's, one of the biggest things that I do with my clients. I enable them to kind of live well for the rest of their lives. I give them enough to empower them enough to be able to do that. And I think that's a very important thing.
that is very important. Long term is very important. When you think about like all the stuff that we talked about, easier said than done, right?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It really is. Which is why having somebody like you or me on board when you're trying to go through this kind of change is so important. Like, I could not have got through my eating disorder recovery without support and guidance from an expert. Like, I had, 3 or 4 different therapists in my journey. And then there's also all the other people in my life that kind of supported me and helped me along the way as well. So, you know, it's not a problem to ask for help. Like, asking for help is a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. Seeking out somebody to support you on a journey like that is absolutely necessary, I would suggest. Unless you already have a lot of your own knowledge and you know how to kind of tackle these things. Somebody else is like a mirror to you and they help you to see things about your life that maybe you can't see for yourself. So, yeah.
I love how you said that, because I have many advisors and mentors and therapists and
Yeah.
coaches, because there's so many, we are so complex that we do need the support. That's why I have this channel to bring on people like yourself.
Yeah.
Is because I want people to get different perspectives, information that's actually facts about what they're dealing with, and how they're not alone, because we all need support systems. We all need
Yeah.
that accountability. We all need that help in that area, where people can walk us through a journey, and we
Yeah.
can actually
Yeah.
follow their template to get where we going, if it fits better for us. Every
Yeah.
situation don't fit, but then you have like people who you have a set of people you help because of what you do and how you've overcome it. But you're right,
Yeah.
it's a journey.
It is. Absolutely.
It's a journey. So what advice would you give like someone who is resistant to they want to, because New Year's Eve coming up, and
Yeah.
New Year's Eve resolutions, people have goals, people have
Yeah.
what they want to do, or people even want to start even before New Year's Eve, but
Yeah.
the mind is like, I want to do it, but the actions is resistant. What advice
Yeah.
would you give your client that's dealing with that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think first of all, ask yourself, where is that resistance? Like, what is that? Because if it's something you want, and but there's something stopping you, like if you can ask yourself, what is that resistance? You probably already know. You're probably just denying it to yourself. We lie to ourselves so much, and I think like personal inquiry is a really important part of any transformational journey. And so, there's ways you can do that. You can do a guided meditation on YouTube. There's like thousands on there. Um, Journaling, if you prefer to write, is a really good way. Speaking to like a close friend and saying to them, I don't know where this resistance is coming from. Can you help me find out? Talking to a therapist, other people who are inspiring you, reading books around making that change. Once you've made that first step into the journey, you will start to attract like more and more things into your life which will help you on that journey. People, situations, opportunities will come to you. And so, that resistance is there for a reason. And usually it's rooted in fear. Our minds are, the ego mind wants to keep us safe all the time. It wants to keep us secure. And that is quite often to the detriment of our health because we don't want to go out of our comfort zone. If you've always used like biscuits to manage your stress, then stopping using biscuits to manage your stress can feel quite scary, particularly for this part of the body. And so if we can go, okay, I want to stop eating biscuits to manage my stress, but I don't know where to start and I don't know how to do it. It's scary and I'm feeling scared. Like, admit that to yourself. It's okay to feel scared. It's okay to not know. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel depressed. Like, all these emotions and feelings that we've attached to like negative emotions, which they're not negative, they're telling you something. Being able to kind of accept them and admit them is literally the first step of any change, I think. So yeah, that's what I would do. And then find somebody that you resonate with, that aligns with your values, that is the sort of person that you think you can put your trust in, and book a free call with them. Most, health coaches and nutritionists, they offer like free consultations at the beginning, and you can just chat with them and see if it feels good for you, and if it doesn't, then it's cool. And if it does, then amazing, and they can help you on your journey. And you will feel every single little step you take towards making that change, you'll feel more empowered. And you'll be like, I did that. Go me. Give yourself a little pat on the back. It's fine to do that, and yeah, each time you make those little steps, you will feel more and more empowered. And eventually you'll look back and you'll go, oh my God, why was I so scared? Now I feel X, Y, and Z has happened. And I feel amazing. And yeah, and you keep doing that, and it's a lifelong journey. You keep doing that through life.
Yes, it is a lifelong journey. Thank you so much, Samantha. You have really given some really good information, and I love it. I love what you do, and so happy that you're doing what you're doing. You're passionate about what you're doing. You're helping people. Listeners, if you really find that this was beneficial, and you know someone that this can really help, please subscribe and share, because the goal is really to help other people and to
Yeah.
support one another
Mm.
in this life journey. We are lifing together, so let's help each other grow.
Yeah.
So, Samantha, how can people reach you? Even though I will put all of your links in the YouTube video once it's done, but how
Yeah.
can people reach you?
Yeah. Okay. That's amazing. Thank you. So my website is www.naturalnut.co.uk. So I have a button on there. You can read a bit about what I do as well. And then there's a button on there to link to my calendar where you can book a free consultation. I'm also on Instagram, and I know you're going to put the links and stuff in. So you can DM me on there, also Facebook as well. I have on there. And also via email, you can just reach out via email. So that I think you're going to put those links on. So, yeah, those are the best ways to get in touch with me, really.
Awesome. So, listeners, let's get healthy mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, so that we can show up as our best selves. So, thank you so much for listening. We are signing off.